Hello everyone, two new modules. This is the A1328 octal poly VCA, and this is the A196 PLL phase locked loop. Both are from Doepfer. Now the PLL is this kind of strange esoteric sound generator. It's based on square waves. It has its own oscillator, voltage controlled. You can patch that output out and use it somewhere. It's also sent on to the top half of this phase comparator, which has 3 selectable modes, comparing input 1 to input 2, and then the output of that goes, you can patch it out separately, or it also goes through a non-resonant low-pass filter, which is basically, since it's non-resonant, you can also think of it as a slew or a glide or a portamento. It smooths out the edges of that square wave, and the farther you turn this, the more like a sine wave it becomes, and then that signal is routed internally back to the CV input, controlling the oscillator. So it's this kind of self-modulating loop. And I just got this, so I haven't explored it in depth, but I've looked at PLLs online and the sounds that they are capable of producing. It's a very interesting module, so I wanted to get this. Now, the octal poly VCA, I got this because Mixology only has 4 inputs. 5 if you count the effect input. That's just not enough. I need more mixing power, and although I can make a passive mixer that is pretty good for what it is, but there are certain disadvantages to a passive mixer. The use of the summing resistors causes the signal to drop the more inputs you have connected. There is a mathematical formula you can use to determine this, but I don't know it. But I just know that listening to it by ear, you can hear that. And also, the passive mixer can't be voltage controlled. The octal poly, as the name octal would suggest, it contains 8 VCAs, but they are grouped in pairs. So you have 4 input channels, each with 2 VCAs. And the reason for there being 2 is you need 1 VCA for your gate or your envelope, just to sort of bite off your oscillator signal into notes, and then you would need a second VCA for dynamics, in other words, to control the overall volume of that channel. The standard configuration would be, if you're using a keyboard, 1 VCA is for your note envelope, and then the other VCA would be for the velocity CV, which would control the relative loudness depending on how hard the key was struck. So anyway, yeah, there are 2 VCAs per channel, so you can have that chopping and also the dynamics control, which I do want because I do lots of percussive type stuff. There's a default gain knob for each stage. The first row of VCAs is linear. The second row can be linear or exponential, depending on how you set some jumpers in the back. I think by default it is exponential because that's what is generally used to control audio volume. What these knobs are for, if you have no CV plugged into any of these jacks, then the default gain will be applied, so you can control the volume that way, which is handy because if you only want to use 1 VCA, without this you wouldn't be able to hear it because the second one in the series would be closed, so you would just hear silence. At any rate, all of these channels can be patched out separately, and there's also a sum output that combines them all together, so it can be used as a mixer. Very handy. Now this test patch I've got running, this I just slapped together to see if these modules worked right, because I just got them and put them in the case about an hour ago. They do seem to be working correctly. I've got both channels of the dual parallel going in there. They are tuned to different notes. One of the CV outputs of the cipher is controlling the pitch of the dual parallel. I'm using Rampage channel A as an oscillator. That's going into one of these channels. The output from the PLL is going into one of these channels. And let's see, the triangle wave of VCO2 is the second input into the PLL. 8-bit cipher is receiving the sawtooth wave of VCO2 as its data input and is being clocked by Muxslicer. Muxslicer's sequencer CV is controlling the pitch of Rampage A. Rampage B is just running, and let's see, the minimum mix output is controlling the second VCA of one of these channels, and then the 3 CV outputs of the cipher are controlling the other 3 channels. All 4 of the linear VCAs are being gated with gate outputs from the cipher. So everything is coming from this case. All of it's patched right in here, except for the delay effect, which is down there, the DSP. And so this is what all of it sounds like. Now that real interesting gritty one that's going like meow, meow, that's the PLL. And I look forward to monkeying with this thing in greater depth. But for now, that was just, like I said, a test patch to verify that everything is working. I hope next time to have something a little more interesting, a little more deliberate, perhaps less procedural for you to listen to. But until then, thanks to my patrons. They bought these for me. And thanks to y'all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.